It's believed that life just cannot exist on Earth if there were no water. We all know that water bodies, especially lakes, have an enormous effect on the social and economic activities of people of the area, as well as their lifestyle. The main uses of water include drinking and irrigation, so water is a blessing. But when contaminated, it becomes a curse that can have a catastrophic impact on human, animal and plant life. Such examples are found in different parts of the world. Today, we'll tell you the stories of a few dangerous lakes that led to extremely hazardous consequences for the people, and most importantly, the concerned governments played the dubious role instead of warning and helping the population. So, hold tight and watch till the end to find out how contaminated water can ruin lives and livelihoods. Don't forget to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel. Contaminated lakes in Russia. Some time ago, a lake measuring 110 acres or equal to 83 football fields called Lake Karachay existed in the vast central region of Russia, downwards to the South Ural Mountains. A horrible story is connected to this lake. In 1945, the United States of America dropped the first ever atomic weapon on Hiroshima, Japan. This incident forced Soviet Union's leader Stalin to compete with the USA, and he ordered the development of top-secret nuclear facilities for producing material required for making nuclear weapons at a place not visible to the adversaries. From 1945 to 1948, the Mayak nuclear facility was constructed on the shores of Lake Karachay in complete secrecy. About 70,000 prisoners of war from 12 Gulag labor camps were used for this purpose. They also built a city in its vicinity which was used to house 10,000 employees working on the plants along with their families, being approximately 60 miles from the nearest city of Chelyabinsk. It was known as Chelyabinsk 40 or City 40. The City 40 was guarded 24 hours a day and surrounded by fences and barbed wire erected on walls. It was not marked on any Soviet Union maps. Citizens could not enter or leave City 40 without special permission from the government. Weapon-grade plutonium was produced here, and by 1949, the Russians had manufactured their first plutonium bomb, which was named First Lightning. Subsequently, they continued to make more atomic weapons, and 44 more cities similar to City 40, or colloquially known as closed cities, were established in different areas of the Soviet Union. Some of the facilities associated with these cities had nuclear research arrangements ranging from plutonium production to uranium enrichment. Russians had borrowed the idea of the closed city from the American city of Richland City, secretly built around the Hanford nuclear plant. Soviet spies had intercepted plans for this city, and Stalin decided to follow the methodology. Soviet atom spies involved in the Manhattan Project stole information regarding nuclear research carried out by the USA. Soviet nuclear facilities had a lot of loopholes related to safety training and radiation monitoring. Workers were not properly protected, and a lot of them suffered ill effects of radiation. 7 main reactors of Mayak used open-cycle water cooling systems to prevent these from overheating. For this purpose, water was obtained from Lake Karachay and nearby Teka River. Without being processed or decontaminated, the water was pumped back into the same water sources which are used for drinking and bathing by the residents of City 40, as well as villagers having a population of around 28,000 along the river Teka. To enhance plutonium production running reactors speedily, authorities failed to evaluate extraordinary requirements for storing all the radioactive waste products. During the initial 3 years, high levels of waste were diluted and dumped into the river Teka. In 1951, they realized that unprecedented damage was being caused to the environment, and they decided to dump the waste in stagnant Lake Karachay. By 1953, authorities started to store high-level waste in stainless steel tanks. A total of 20 tanks could store up to 1.6 million gallons, equal to more than 2 full Olympic swimming pools of radioactive waste. These tanks were buried underground, surrounded by a 5-foot thick concrete casing, and were kept cool using an external cooling system. These tanks were to prevent overheating, but the instruments failed to monitor, and the level of radiation rose too high. Resultantly, waste stored in the tanks reached 662 degrees Fahrenheit or 350 degrees Celsius. On the 20th of September 1957 at 4:20 p.m, an explosion having the force of 100 tons of TNT took place at the Mayak complex. The 5-foot thick concrete lid blew over 80 feet away, and 80 tons of radioactive waste spewed out. 90% of the waste was liquid, which irradiated only nearby facilities, whereas the remaining 10% drew into a radioactive plume rising 0.5 miles high. Within 11 hours, radioactive particles were detected in Tumin City, about 200 miles away from Mayak. Within a few days, about 9,000 square miles encompassing 217 towns and villages, having over 270,000 people, were contaminated with the lethal radiation. It was called Kishtim disaster. Only 2 other incidents in history are considered more severe than this. The government estimated that villages downstream from the place of disaster, Berdianish, Saltikova and Galkava, would receive a huge dose of accumulated radiation within a month. Residents were thought to receive accumulative radiation doses of up to 300 rads, compared with just 5 rads that could potentially and irreversibly damage a person's chromosomes. After 10 days, about 1,500 people from these villages were evacuated, whereas the villages were destroyed and incinerated. A follow-up study revealed that no substantial radiation damage was detected in the survivors. About 6 months later, approximately 6,500 more people were evacuated from 23 more villages. The government of the Soviet Union covered up the incident. Over time, untreated waste dumped in the Lake Karachay accumulated to 120 million curies of radioactivity, whereas in the case of Chernobyl, 185 million curies of radioactivity were released. Radioactive isotope cesium-137, which caused land contamination, was 40 times higher in Karachay compared with Chernobyl. Anyone who dared to dip his foot in contaminated water would receive a lethal dose of over 500 rads that would result in extreme radiation sickness, and exposure would cause deterioration of body cells, so that in 30 days there were 95% chance that the individuals would be dead. By 1960, Lake Karachay seemed to dry, and by winter of 1967 all the water was evaporated. The radioactive sediment was contained in the dry dust layer in the lake bed. A windstorm spread the sediment over the region, which exposed people in the environment to another severe dose of radiation. In 1973, the Soviet government commenced to fill in the lake with tens of thousands of concrete blocks, and by 2015 the task was accomplished. In 1989, Russian authorities finally declassified the information. In 1991, the existence of City 40 was formally acknowledged by the government, which renamed it Ozersk. Descendants of original inhabitants of the city still live there and enjoy the benefits promised to their forefathers, but they face other health problems, including low life expectancy. About 26 miles from Karachay, the town of Karabash has a lake having water with a reddish-orange hue. In 1910, a copper smelting plant was installed at Karabash. More than 180 tons of sulfur dioxide and heavy metals were released into the environment from this site each year. It was closed in 1989, but the area still holds 500 times the normal concentration of heavy metals like iron and copper oxide in it. Longer-term residents of the area suffer higher rates of skin diseases, cancer, strokes and congenital malformations. Kawa Ijen. This turquoise water on the top of a mountain is immensely pleasing, but you need to be careful as it's located in the active volcanic crater of Kawa Ijen in Java, Indonesia. This color is produced by a large number of materials, including hydrochloric and sulfuric acids, created by volcanic activity and dissolved in the water. Besides making the water look gorgeous, it also gives it a pH of 0.3. Neutral elements like water have a pH value of around 7, whereas stomach acid has a pH of 1. Putting your feet in this water may result in chemical burns causing red irritated skin blistering. If someone stays longer in the water, one's entire body, including teeth, would be dissolved in about 15 hours. Blue Lagoon. Another deceptively gorgeous turquoise lake is found in the UK. It's formed in a pit dug into the Derbyshire countryside. It's called the Blue Lagoon. In 2013 and 2020, the local council converted the bright blue water of the lake into black so that fond swimmers could be deterred from entering the lake as it is toxic. It's formed in an old limestone quarry, which, being disused in 1952, was used by Royal Air Force for storing chemical weapons until 1960. Consequently, it was emptied and rainwater gathered in it. Limestone rocks leached calcite crystals and turned the water turquoise and gave the lake a pH of 11.3. Ammonia has a pH of 11.5, whereas bleach is about 12, so you can imagine how horrible it would be for humans to get into this lake. Warning signs posted did not suffice to dissuade people from being drawn in during lockdown. Berkeley Pit. But Montana has a pit measuring 0.5 miles in width and 1 mile in length. It's filled with ominous black and red liquid which has a depth of 1,780 feet. It's known as Berkeley Pit, an open-pit copper mine dug in the 1950s. At that time it produced approximately 17,000 tons of copper per day. After becoming unprofitable, it was closed in 1982. Its pumps were shut off, which kept groundwater at bay, and the pit started to flood. Water accumulating in the pit was full of chemicals and metals leached from the rock like arsenic, cadmium, zinc and sulfuric acid, which caused the devilish colour. In 1995, a flock of 342 snow geese were found dead in this lake as the water had a pH of 2.5. It was acidic and it caused burns on their bodies. Montana authorities have tried to treat the water, but still it remains dangerous. Grand Prismatic Spring. Grand Prismatic Spring of Yellowstone National Park, located in the Midway Geyser Basin, is the third largest natural hot water spring in the world. It has a diameter of 370 meters. Astonishing concentric circles of blue, green, yellow and orange presents it to be a painting on the bedrock beneath. The incredible color is caused by heat-loving bacteria. The geographically heated water erupts on the center of the spring. Its temperature reaches 189 degrees Fahrenheit. When it spreads out, the water cools and creates rings of different bacteria that flourish at different temperatures, which range from 131 to 189 degrees Fahrenheit. It's so hot that it can cause third-degree burns. In 2016, a young man named Colin Scott slipped and fell into a nearby geyser. He was boiled alive and his body dissolved overnight due to acidity and extreme temperatures. Rio Tinto. Rio Tinto River seems like a gummy worm spread over the countryside of Spain. Its name translates into the Tainted River. It's about 62 miles long. Half of the river is coloured red, orange and yellow. The river flows through an area that's rich with sulfur ore deposits that scientists believe were formed hundreds of millions of years ago. Active volcanoes and mining for thousands of years in the area have amplified the process and increased the amount of exposed ore. Therefore, the river has become extensively acidic, and its water is suitable for living by sulfur-consuming bacteria which consume sulfur and produce ferric iron, a rust-coloured substance that causes red hues in the river. Bacteria and iron ore drop the pH level of the river down to 1.5, implying that the river is just like vinegar. Lake Natron. Stunning Serengeti National Park is an icon of Tanzania. The country has a 490 square mile water body located on its northern border, known as Lake Natron. The area is immensely hot and most of the lake water is evaporated, which leaves behind the salty mineral-rich remnants crusted over the surface like big red scabs. Water remaining in the lake is extremely saturated with salt, and birds flying over it when dipping for water get coated in crystals. Birds are calcified and get trapped. Sodium and mineral-rich bedrock makes the environment strongly alkaline, and water has a pH of 10 on a mild day, whereas a pH of 12 when the temperatures rise to 140 degrees Fahrenheit. In 2007, the helicopter of an unfortunate group of wildlife photographers flying over the lake crashed into the hot water, which immediately started burning their eyes. They miraculously managed to travel around 2 miles on the nearby solid ground, and luckily they all recovered. Boiling lake. Fumaroles are openings in the planet's crust that emit superheated steam and gases. When fumaroles are flooded, they turn into boiling lakes, like these found in Dominica. This one is 250 feet wide and enveloped in an ever-present vapor cloud as the water temperature varies between 180 and 197 degrees Fahrenheit. It's the temperature scientists have measured at the edges, but have not been able to measure the temperature at the center, where the lake is profoundly boiling. It's thought that the lake is situated just above the local water table, which prevents the lake from drying up despite constant evaporation of its water. In 1900, a group of hikers roaming in the area were affected by the sudden release of a cloud of toxic volcanic gases, which led to their deaths. Despite being warned against it, people have been visiting these contaminated sites. Do you plan to visit some of these forbidden water bodies? Do share with us in the comments section below which one you would like to see. We'll be back soon with another amazing and informative video for you guys. Until then, have a great time and make sure to subscribe to our channel.